can't have sex with them in a bunk. Hopefully you guys get back here or in one of these bunks one day.
What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Straight off the bat, if you like my music news, music reviews and just general music talks, then please do hit the subscribe button. It is the most helpful thing that you can do for the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Bring Me the Horizon of Mice and Men and Asking Alexandria, because out of that whole sort of metalcore Warped Tour scene of the last 10 years or so, these three bands are the ones which stick out the most. They've had some of the most successful tours, they get some of the most listeners out of the metalcore and that sort of heavier rock genre on Spotify. 10 years ago or so, they were all on similar tours, playing similar size shows and had a similar sort of fan base. In fact, when I saw of Mice and Men at Brixton, before they came on and whilst the roadies were setting up, they were actually playing Sempiternal through the PA system and the crowd were going nuts. They were actually cheering for the PA system. They've all had slight changes in musical style, going from deathcore, metalcore to more heavier rock, and then in some cases back to the metalcore roots. They've all been influential in their own right, especially considering that two of the bands on that list are from the United Kingdom. Yet Bring Me the Horizon are clearly the most successful of the bunch, sitting at nearly double the amount of listeners as the other two bands combined on Spotify, consistently either headlining festivals playing 1 to 2 hour sets rather than 40 to 50 minutes, regularly headlining arenas, doing these huge massive arena tours. And I think the most innovative thing they did, which really cemented them as a legendary status band, was playing the Royal Albert Hall with an orchestra, because this is the type of thing which, if you're not familiar with, only really gets done by those big legendary bands such as Kiss and Metallica. Now, I want everyone to note that everything I say in this video isn't heavy criticism, it isn't slander, it isn't bad-mouthing towards any of the bands that I mention, particularly Asking Alexandria. It's more just general feedback and commentary. And look, most of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is things which has happened years ago. The band have already acknowledged it, they've already dealt with it, they've already moved on, so it doesn't really matter too much about what I say, but it's not so much bad mouthing. So let's get into this. Why have Bring Me the Horizon come out on top, whilst the other bands still have very, very successful careers, but never really sort of broke through that limbo of 40 to 60 second sets at festivals? And there are three major reasons why I think Bring Me the Horizon boomed to the top there, or at least unique reasons from my perspective, considering other channels such as the Punk Rock NBA have already covered why Bring Me the Horizon was so innovative and ahead of the game. And this is just my take on it. One more time, hit that subscribe button. Let's get into this. Part 1. The head start. Now, Bring Me the Horizon were already playing small local festivals in the tents back in 2006. They had a really good following on MySpace with songs like Dragon Slaying, Pray for Plagues, and Tell Slater already getting really good circulation. The Drop Dead label was starting to take off, and all the little scene girls had a crush on Ollie Sykes, whilst all the little scene men or boys had sort of this hatred or jealousy towards Ollie Sykes. Meanwhile, it wasn't that Of Mice and Men hadn't even started by 2006. It's that Austin's previous band, Attack Attack, had barely even started in 2006. Same thing with Asking Alexandria. They were very young. They were around 16 years old at this time, and Ben Bruce was in a totally different version of Asking Alexandria, based over in Dubai whilst his family were living abroad. So before either of the other two bands had even gotten attention, Bring Me the Horizon were already touring regularly, had released like 2 albums nearly, and then had a third on the way, which was their real breakthrough album, which got them on international tours in places such as Australia, had their music videos played on the TV channels quite regularly, which broadcast them to a new audience. And their music was more appealing to a broader audience because it wasn't just metalcore, or it wasn't just that old deathcore music. They were also blending in elements of rock and some symphonic metal there as well, which I think was really, really appealing. Part 2. The cringe. Now, this is definitely not to say that Bring Me Horizon have not had their fair share of Cringe. Ollie Sykes was doing that sort of scene metalcore claw thing in all his photos, which people were making fun of and replicating. He allegedly attacked a fan and urinated on them in their tour bus. Some people thought the Drop Dead collection at this time was also cringe. However, I thought it was quite cool, and it was very, very ahead of its time, the Drop Dead collection, because it had these like cartoon dinosaurs on it. It had these big letter words, which eventually other brands and other bands would start replicating anyway. So I thought that was really cool, but some people thought it was kind of lame. Ollie was also smart to endorse other bands and eventually would go on to endorse massive arena bands like Busted with the label as well. So he's very, very good with this label. It's fantastic. But let's talk about the cringe of the other bands, because that's the part which is going to be really fun for me and pretty funny, I think. Let's start with Asking Alexandria. Now, they were smart to move to America, because breaking the music scene in the UK is one thing, but if you go to America and you break into the music scene there, you're going to trickle off into the UK scene anyway, especially if you're signed to a label like Sumerian. But people in the UK didn't actually take that much of a liking to Asking Alexandria at first, partly because the cool thing in the UK between 2009 to 2012 was actually hardcore music. Hardcore was the cool genre to listen to, and metalcore was seen as a lame thing. But the other thing was that Asking Alexandria put on these sort of obnoxious personas, which people didn't really take to very well, particularly the bragging about how much partying and how much sex they were having at the time.
10 and 30 people in this theatre. People are crowd surfing.
You may think this is an exaggeration, but watch this quick clip from their bus invaders a while ago.
Keep it nice and drunk. Oops. The groupie zone. Bring girls back if shit happens. You can't have sex with them in a bunk. Hopefully you guys get back here or in one of these bunks one day.
Just in like 2 4-minute videos, one from Bus Invaders and one from Metal Hammer, they mentioned like having sex like 3 or 4 times, and it just really felt like they were compensating for something. They did the same thing with the whole partying thing as well, but mainly the sex thing. Writing songs about having sex, bragging about it. Let's face it, some of these guys are pretty good looking, but they're not the best looking guys. And if you were a scene kid between 2007 to 2013, most normie girls thought you were gross, okay? I know it because I was one myself. Most normie girls thought you were weird. The only girls who found you attractive were other scene kid girls. So to have these sort of average looking scene kid guys bragging about how much sex they're having and even writing songs about it felt really try hard, especially as when they were writing the songs, they were like 17, 18, 19 years old at the time. So they'd probably only had sex like 3 times, maybe not at all, maybe not even at all. They could have been lying, you know. And I think a lot of people saw through that, and they didn't really take to it, along with the fact that the music was good, but it was a lot more generic than Of Mice and Men and Bring Me the Horizon. And it's changed now, and they've garnered a huge following, and they have such a blend of styles in there. They have like rock and roll and blues rock and heavy metal and metalcore blended into their sound, and that's really cool. But at the time, people just weren't having it. And look, they could have been trying to be charismatic, okay? They could have been trying to be charismatic because being charismatic is appealing, but they were trying so hard that it just seemed a bit fake. And with someone like Ollie Sykes, when he's charismatic, he's just naturally charismatic. He's just naturally funny. He's just naturally entertaining to watch. Whereas I think they were trying to sort of do that, but just falling short, and it just came across as cringe. And a lot of the hardcore kids and the scene kids just weren't really having it. But like I said, that decision to move to the United States really worked out for them, because the United States was very much into metalcore at the time. The Warped Tour had transitioned from sort of a skate punk and ska festival into this big metalcore festival with a bit of pop punk, and it just fit perfectly well for them. Now let's get Of Mice and Men out the way, who most of the members have largely avoided the cringe, and they are very talented musicians, and they are very good songwriters, and they're great vocalists. Both Shaylee and Aaron are incredible vocalists. Alan is a great guitar player. Phil is a great guitar player. It mainly lies on Austin Carlisle, who recently has had his Twitter account suspended, and none of the other members follow him, and he doesn't follow them. So even though you've never really seen any that much public bad mouthing, it definitely seems like Austin is the kind of guy that leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. Multiple women have accused him of assault. He got kicked out of Attack Attack back in 2008, 2009, just a very short while after releasing their first album. He then formed of Mice and Men, but had to leave shortly after for heart surgery, and during this interim, other members of the band at the time were actually sort of bad-mouthing him in interviews. He rejoined of Mice and Men, but then had to leave a few years later due to his Marfan syndrome, and again, there seems to be a bit of animosity there, so we don't know what's happening behind closed doors, but it certainly seems like he might be a difficult person to get along with. All the evidence points towards that, and I think this whole lineup changing for both Asking Alexandria and of Mice and Men, combined with animosity plus the genre popularity sort of declining, has been why they kind of never progressed past that point, which would lead them to Bring Me the Horizon's level. Both bands still have an incredible career. They've had like platinum albums, do incredible tours, play amazing festivals, have good amount of listeners. They're not on Bring Me the Horizon's level, but I think that's because Bring Me the Horizon started writing very, very different music to what they're doing 10 years ago anyway, so they are appealing to a different crowd. Lately, they've released like full-on pop and like pop-punk songs. They were started writing music which was way more rock rather than metal, which meant that they were appealing to larger crowds, getting more radio play. Actually, they were getting like radio play, and they were playing at award ceremonies. So the other two bands have definitely had successful careers, and they certainly can't complain, but I definitely think that all this turbulence and member changes is what hasn't pushed them to the next level, and that will be reason number 3. Member changes. Now, Bring Me the Horizon have certainly had a few member changes, but it actually worked for them. You see, back in 2011, when they were making There Is a Hell album, they had Jonah Weinhofen of I Killed the Prom Queen fame working with them. Now, he's an incredible songwriter. He was a great backup vocalist, and I think that his input, his creative input into that album was very, very cool. But what a lot of people don't know is they still had Jordan Fish working with them as a session musician at this time. And eventually when Jonah would go and leave the band and they recruited Jordan to a full-time member, his input was just incredible. And this is where the member change actually really worked for them. Sometimes member changes can actually throw some gum in the works. Let's look at Asking Alexandria. When Danny Worsnop left and did his, again, cringe sort of weird country thing, where he thought he was a country music star and started speaking in an American accent, even though he's from Yorkshire, which literally looks like this. Yorkshire is like the most English England you can get. They released that album with Dennis Stoff, which was a good album. They still played the Warped Tour and stuff, but it definitely put a standstill in their work, and they actually slowed down a bit, lost some momentum. Danny rejoined, they changed musical styles, people found it a bit generic, some people loved it, and it's been pretty steady uprise since then. It's been pretty good, but it definitely threw a gum in their work. Similar thing with Of Mice and Men, although I definitely think they are better off without Austin. Their performances are still very, very energetic. They still play to similar size crowds. They're still doing incredibly. The music's actually gotten heavier and better. It's less like mainstream rock and more metalcore, and I enjoy it more, and most of their fans enjoy it more, so that's all good. Then Jackson leaving and Shaylee taking over on bass, and then Shaylee leaving, and then the perfect replacement ever, like Aaron Pauley joining as the vocalist. Absolutely incredible, amazing. But it's not been so beneficial. They haven't had a Jordan Fish join the band, where he joins the band and he's adding all of these amazing keyboard parts to it. He's really innovative with his songwriting. Some of the ideas for the slower songs in the album, I'm sure, came from Jordan. Jordan is such a hands-on like production person. You can see him working and being very creative in a lot of their video footage. He's amazing with the live performances. He does a lot of the backing vocals. Even though Lee is an extremely talented guitar player, Ollie's a good vocalist, they're all good songwriters. I certainly believe that Jordan is a bit of the driving force behind this, and he's been like a blessing in disguise for the band, because their recent music, especially with the Ammo album, but also That's the Spirit album, again, which I think was just such a banger for them. It just kept going better and better and better for Bring Me the Horizon, because every release just got better, whereas it hasn't been the same for the other bands. It's been like popular, less popular, really popular, not so popular, not so popular, really popular. But with Bring Me the Horizon, it's been like, oh, There Is a Hell. that's a really good album. That's better. Oh, Sempiternal. Wow, that's even better. All these keyboards sound great. It's heavy, but it's got keyboards in it. It's got clean vocals. That's amazing. Oh, that's The Spirit. Wow, mainstream rock sound, but still heavy, but still great for a festival crowd, but still good for an award show, but still good for radio, but still good for the heavy music likers. Oh, I love that. Oh, Ammo. Oh, very, very mainstream. Appeals to a wider audience. Some of the older fans get annoyed. Some people love it, but still great. Constant uprising, which I think is fantastic. So the member changes, whether it be Jonah and his amazing input or Jordan and his incredible input, have really worked for Bring Me the Horizon. It's sort of put a gum in the works for the other bands and just made it a little bit turbulent, but to no avail. It's still all good. The bands are still doing well. They're all fantastic. They've got good amounts of listeners. The albums do well. Their performances are great. And they seem to be having fun these days. And that's the most important thing. In recent performances, it looks like Danny and Ben are really, really having fun with it, which is really refreshing and really great, especially considering their 2019 performances. I personally wasn't too keen on them, but you could definitely tell that the energy wasn't there as much from the crowd or from the band. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for watching today. I had a lot of fun putting this video together, like writing the script, getting all the footage and doing all the talking and the editing. It's all been really good. This was something that I'm really passionate about, and I really love this. I love this genre. I love the bands, respectfully, of course. And yeah, really appreciate it. Guys, please hit the subscribe button. Most important thing that you can do for this channel, and I will see you in the next video.